This is the North End.
It's time for some breaking news here on the North End YouTube channel. Raphael Varane has been confirmed at Manchester United. Jules Koundé looks like he's going to Chelsea. And of course, Toby Alderweireld is saying goodbye to Spurs after 6 seasons. And I'm here with Paul to discuss. Welcome to the show, Paul. Welcome to the people who are here watching.
Hi, everybody. Hi out there in TV land or folks. YouTube land.
If you're watching this live, fantastic, which there isn't anybody here yet, Paul, but that's fine. We just slapped this together quickly. This is something we are going to be doing in the future, so make sure you subscribe, look for our updates. We're going to let people know that this is happening so you can kind of follow along and keep up with all the transfer news. Paul, you must be shocked, clearly based on your name on your screen right now. Shocked, Paul. Tell us how you feel.
So obviously, as the one of the many Man United fans on this planet, inundated with the rumor of Raphael Varane for the past, I know if you really want to go to it, it's probably been about 5 years. We're always attached to this guy. It's always been a Varane to Man United sub-story amongst a sea of other stories. So when it happened this time around, I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. All right. We've been here before. We've been here specifically before with Ramos when he was at the end of a contract or nearing contract negotiations.
Right.
I did not allow myself to pay that much attention to this rumor because for me, like the Sancho one is the one where I wanted that thing closed. I wanted that done. And then this was a peripheral thing. And then this happened so much faster. Only when I got my head around this might be happening did out of nowhere the announcement came today, and it's a done deal, and it's happened. I just so delighted with this. The implications for this are so significant for Man United. And
it says this right here on the what he's won. Unbelievable
goddamn winner.
Player. Yeah,
he's a goddamn winner, and I love that we seem to be signing guys that if there was any concern about the pull power of Man United, which is a big thing. Like if you lose that, that's significant. Like you're not going to get much better if you can't get the world's best players. So even if I take away the defensive need for a player of his stature and ability, which I think is definitely there, the statement that this says to everybody that this is still a club that people want to go to and players want to go to, and that this is a project that can attract guys who are leaving Real Madrid. I love it. Like there's just so many ups on this. Realistically, the other side of this is he is going to a league that's significantly harder. I think, much more physical. I think he and Harry Maguire have never worked together before, have never come cross paths before. I don't know how great his English is. I know communication's a big deal.
Especially in that position, right? Like the center half, there's a lot of talking going on.
There's a lot of things that can go wrong with this. I think Victor Lindelof is, this is an upgrade. But I also think that the other element to this is a little bit, well, how does Victor Lindelof respond to competition? Because he's been devoid of competition for like 3 years. Eric Bailly's always injured. Phil Jones is always injured. The young kids are, they're young and also always injured. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out with Lindelof, because I think we're all taking it for granted that it's an immediate replacement situation. And I don't know that Ole does that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still shocked and stunned by this. Not the least to say the business at Man United had been so long and drawn out, and so you got bored of the rumor before it even happened because you had been hearing about it for a year or two.
Yeah.
Like this is the only one where I'm just like, it happened that fast, and I was taken aback, and I was just like, I'm glowing, I'm buzzing right now because of this news.
I want to say I'm happy for you, just because you're my mate, so I'm going to say that. But it does make me a bit nervous to see the types of players going to Manchester United and what you guys are going to look like from a starting 11 perspective. Let's bring up that graphic here and take a look at it, because I do think it's an important thing to have a look at who's going to be playing where, and the sort of, like you talked about, the communication. Is De Gea still in net for you? Is he going to still be there? Is that a question? I was wondering about that myself when it came to who's going to get the starting position for United next season.
I get the sense that the rumor mills are that De Gea is on a mission to reclaim number one, and that seems to be his stance. I think he's probably got a competitive bug in him from losing his place last year, losing a final last year, losing his place as starting goaltender for Spain. I think there's maybe a fire under his ass, which, hopefully he can refine some of this form at Man United or somewhere else. So I think he's up for the fight. I think the flip of that is that Henderson is maybe thinking, well, no, I should be the number one. And if I'm not, well, I'm going to move on.
Why did I come here, essentially, right?
Yeah, and he's an academy guy. Like, his mission is to become number one, and he's got a claim to say that on ability and results, he's got the gloves. So I don't know if either one of them is going to actually make a move and force the issue before the season starts. If they don't, I think what Ole will do is give them a chance to go head to head, and it doesn't happen in the Premier League very often that's the case. But I because they're both at different ends of their career,
I could see it happening for sure.
I can see it happening for one more season.
Question for you, Paul, in regards to what you mentioned earlier about communication. De Gea and Varane obviously could understand each other if they both speak Spanish, correct? So that conversation, or that at least what you need at the back when you're having a communication between your back four plus the keeper is really important. Does De Gea have an advantage because of that he can speak to Varane and still get his communication across to him and Maguire at the same time, potentially?
You know what? That's a real strong possibility. I don't think he's famously known for being the most vocal of keepers anyways. Like, he's not necessarily the guy who really organizes to the, like, maybe side conversations, maybe during training. He can maybe help him catch up to speed. If there's any confusion, there's a guy in the box he can look towards and go, what did that flat-headed giant Maguire just say to me? And he can give him a quick translation, which might be useful. But it's hard to see, like, a guy who's not that great at organizing all of a sudden being better at organizing because he speaks a language of one of the center backs.
Yeah.
For sure, Henderson won't know what the hell's going on, and he's a much more vocal organizer, which is one of the strengths he brings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if he's coming in and he's betting into this team, the players that will bring him up to speed very quickly, I think, are Pogba, who speaks the language. Obviously, they're international teammates. I think Juan Mata is the guy who will definitely, like, bring him under the umbrella of the Man United way, if you will. But when it gets down to, like, really gelling with the defense at Man United, that's the big experiment. Like, Luke Shaw is not going to speak the language the same. Maguire is not going to speak the same language. Tellez might, but he's still kind of new to himself. So it's going to be really interesting to see how long this takes. But the other side of this is he's so accomplished, and he's such a been around the block. He's not a young guy. Like, he knows the craft of being a center back. So I'm hoping he hits the ground running. But we got Victor Lindelof there as well, just in case. And I think this is probably going to be a starting position he has to earn.
For sure. One quick question before we move on. Out of this starting lineup, is there, during this transfer window that's open, is there any other positions that you'd like to see dealt with? You've gotten that right winger that you've been missing for, arguably 6-7 seasons. You've needed somebody in that position. You finally got it. You've got a proper center half pairing, which you've been struggling to get, really, let's be honest, for probably the last 3 or 4, like that you've got 2 top-notch center halves. Where on the pitch that you're looking at right now, looking at this team, that you're like, you could use a little bit more in that position, and that would maybe get you to a position where you could compete with the likes of City and Liverpool properly? Yeah,
I love the question. So I would look at Wan-Bissaka and go, against certain teams, he's absolutely the right guy. He's 100% the guy you want out there to shut down that wing. Against certain teams, he's increasingly getting stronger at being an offensive option. But I think he's got a definite, like, one-sided skill set where he's so much more defensively sound one-on-one. That's not by the way, everybody confuses this. He's not an amazing defender. He's amazing one-on-one at a defender, but he can go out to lunch when it comes to positional things. So he's not necessarily an amazing defender. But when it comes to the attacking end, I do like the idea of having somebody come in to be competition for him. Not necessarily long-term competition. So Kieran Trippier is probably the guy that gets talked about the most as being that option. Either a signing like that, a guy who's a pro, and a winner. But is very much more of an offensive option.
Trips has got a great, coming from, obviously him coming from Spurs, he's got a great cross and a great dead ball and offers a lot going forward and can defend pretty well. He had a great season at Atletico as well. Probably the best season of his career. So if you could get him, on that side with Sancho, you guys would be that side of the pitch would be sorted for a long.
I would be very happy with that. But that's like a bit of I almost labeled that as like a luxury signing. Like we could go forward without that. So for me, the critical would be when you look at this lineup here, Scott McTominay he'll do a job for sure. He will do a job, but Scott McTominay and Fred are the only way you really get the performance that makes Scott McTominay even an option. Like without Fred beside him, so that double pivot reliance, neither one of them plays all that well unless they're playing beside each other, which is a bit of a gift. It's not to say like people shit on that as being like such an awful thing. It's like certain games, that's great that you have a double pivot that can run around the field and break up play and do a very good to great job at times. But when Man United play at home against a lot of the teams and the defense is being stacked and they're being challenged to break the defense, Scott McTominay is a guy I look at saying, well, Pogba and Bruno can't just go forward and do their thing because you can't rely on Scott McTominay to defend the back four. I mean, maybe you can with Varane's there. Like that changes a lot of that hypothesis I just listed. But for me,
you need like a center defensive midfielder.
I would like a center defensive midfield player, and I think people get tied up on being like a real dedicated center defensive midfield player. Like I don't necessarily mean a Conte style player. I mean somebody who can get the ball and move the ball with accuracy and speed and intelligence and guile, as well as put in the shift to break up play and get some tackles. Like a Ruben Neves is a guy that you wouldn't say he's a tackler. Like he's not a guy who breaks up play. But against a team like Burnley, who are asking you to break you down, Ruben Neves will know exactly how to move the ball quickly and attack with speed and get the ball to Pogba or Bruno like in a way that really gets the most out of the offense while doing a shift and breaking up play in the middle. So there's a lot of options. Happily, what I'm saying is I really just want a guy who's a accomplished defensive minded, but singularly a midfield player. And there's a lot of those guys. Like Scott McTominay, everybody forgets about this. This guy started off as a striker. Like it was Jose Mourinho said, "Hey, you're a tall lad. How do you feel about running around in the middle of my pitch and breaking up play?" And he's like, "Okay, I'll do that for you." But he's only been doing it for like 3 years. He's a trained striker. Like
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a fucking miracle that he can do what he does. But there's a ceiling to how good he's going to be, I think, and I think we all kind of know it. So if we can get a CDM or just a box to box,
a good number 8.
Like there's so many different things you could do with just a basic improvement there in our midfield, not being reliant on a double pivot with Fred and McTominay. Then all of a sudden this squad is
get you further up the pitch, I think, too, right? I think that's, especially when you can support Fernandez and Pogba a little bit better with not having that 2 in the pivot. Yeah. You can get another player forward and you get, you get a little bit more dangerous in the opposition end. And
Man United options. Man United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a if you don't catch the other team at speed on the transition or move the ball with dedication and purpose between the lines, that team will struggle to break down teams that stack lines of defenders. Right. That's when we get kind of overly reliant on a moment of magic from a Cavani or a Greenwood or something that's not necessarily a reward for the way the team has been set up and playing. It's really more about relying on individuals. So I would like the pace of the midfield to increase, and that's why I would like to see a McTominay get a bit of a plus up for the squad in the starting 11. But
gotcha.
I mean, the biggest thing that was a right winger, and they went out and got that. It took 2 years to do it, but they got their man and support and defense. And Varane was a guy that honestly, like, you didn't dare to dream that you would get the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think it's like, just from looking at this team, I think you're 100% right. I think you've gotten everything except for that CDM, and that CDM, if you can get him this season, I do think, you guys are you're going to maybe not challenge for top yet. I think that you got to play together for a season or two. And then maybe another key little spots that you can manage, but looks good. It's probably the best starting 11 I've seen for United in a while that I've been like, ooh, that looks very, very strong, especially in defense. So yeah, happy for you, buddy. And yeah, I wish it was like I had other things to share from the Spurs perspective. But let's get into one thing that's it's kind of a rumor still, and we don't really know 100% how this is going to go down or happen. But it's sorry, what's his name? Koundé. I forget his first name. Koundé. Yeah, he was initially connected to Spurs. That broke down, unfortunately, due to him wanting to arguably play with a Champions League team, which makes complete sense. Why wouldn't you if you're Jules Koundé? He's a French center back. Looks really, really good. I mean, I would have loved to see him at Spurs. What do you think about him going to Chelsea? It's a massive transfer for them, and arguably makes them really, really strong defensively as well.
Right. So because Man United have been attached with pretty much every center back for the past 5 months, I know a bit about this guy. We were pretty heavily linked to him. We still are linked to him, even though Varane was just signed. There is still talk that we may not be done with stacking the defense. I don't think there's much stock to what I just said, but that is still the case. So he's a really interesting player. He played on the right side of the defense in the back four for France during the Euro because he's got pace. Like, he's a fast guy. He's the kind of guy that, as a center back, just chews up the grass between him and the ball. He's surprisingly physical for a guy who's 6 foot. He's got what I would use as basketball term as saying hops. Like, he doesn't lose aerial duels very often for a guy his size, which is great. And he is super gifted and intelligent with the ball at his feet. Like, his passing is one of the key attributes. So the idea being, Sevilla is not one of the more dominant possession teams in La Liga. Imagine what you could do with him if he was on a dominant possession team in the Premier League or anywhere else. So I can totally see why Chelsea are attached to this. I can see why he would be courted by a lot of clubs this summer, particularly because the situation in La Liga is that a lot of clubs are being forced to sell.
Yeah, no money, right?
There's no money going around. So if you've got a sellable asset, it's time to cash in and probably
$66 million to, I don't know what works out in pounds or euros, but probably about 50 million pounds around there.
I think the rumor is about 50 million would be the price for him. But I mean, it's, if I could say anything from the Varane purchase, is that there's something weird going on where I think the numbers, it's the opposite of inflation. It's like a player like Varane should have gone for 60 million, even with a year left in his contract, but he went for 40.
It's like COVID devaluation in a sense.
Yeah, or like just smell the desperation.
Yeah.
We just go to the negotiation table and go, we can smell the desperation off you. What we're prepared to offer you is 10 million less than what you're expecting.
Yeah, because they're going to have to give it up anyway, so you're just waiting for them to do it.
Yeah, so I think a lot of English clubs, because they're all still, by comparison, doing quite well financially, again, by comparison to La Liga clubs. So I can see why this is happening. And I think he would immediately improve a pretty stacked defense at Chelsea.
They don't need him, but like it's a good purchase for the price and for the timing, right? Like it's only going to make them a better team.
I would certainly suggest that if he comes in, somebody's on their way out, like a Christensen or a Zuma or somebody needs to go to make space for him.
Yeah.
And this, like, it is a big rumor. I don't want to poo-poo or suggest that it's not worth talking about. But what I will throw out into the world is this. Players that play in La Liga that play against Barcelona and Real Madrid, very similar to the Bundesliga and Bayern Munich, see their best next step often as being a move to those two teams, being not changing leagues and lifestyle, but going to the two biggest, best teams.
It's the step up, right?
Yeah, in La Liga. I mean, both those clubs, like, you could be playing in Burnley and your dream is to play in Real Madrid. So they've got that star draw. Mm-hmm. I just think everybody has to be mindful that I can see why Chelsea would be going for this guy. I can certainly see that. But Real Madrid now just sold Ramos and Varane.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
So guess who's looking for a center back in Spain and will know how good this guy is? and probably could not have approached him until the situation with Varane was resolved, and they were offering him a new contract. They were trying to land him,
and
so
he was waiting for this too, is my understanding. But when it came to what was going on with Spurs put in a bid. He was like, I want to go to a Champions League team. They had accepted all of the contract, except the player didn't want to go. It came out that he was waiting for Real Madrid to come in for him specifically, but then Chelsea jumped on it and said, hey, why wouldn't we spend the money? We've got it. Is it a scenario where you think Real Madrid don't have the money? Like, are they in a scenario, like, is it that messed up for them that they can't really afford it?
I think a lot of people are suggesting that because Chelsea are talking to his people, or even the club, that's the same as this is a done deal. Like, it
came out to me though that he had agreed to the terms more so than previously thought, that the club had agreed to sell him. So that there's it seems to me like he's interested in going to Chelsea more so than not to say more so than Real Madrid, but at least that's the rumor.
Listen, but this is how these things happen. Like, you can talk to 3 or 4 clubs and be interested in 2 of them, but not sign the deal until you've heard back from both. And even if you're interested in 2, you may still have a clear preference. So anything that's being reported about his interest or his agreements or any of those things with Chelsea, they could all still be true, while the other notion can still be very true, that prices haven't been agreed to with the selling club. That happens all the time. Or there is I'm not going to sign this agreement even though I'm happy with it until I know definitively that Real Madrid are not going to come knocking on my door. And for Real Madrid, their position would have been, well, a week ago, we were still trying to land Varane, who's still very important to us. Now we've sold him on. That's our new reality. So they're probably looking at their lists of who's available at center back and picking up the phone and talk. So both these tracks can be happening at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
And these rumors could all still be very true. It just means for Chelsea fans, like, don't get too excited until it's a done deal, because I do think all of a sudden on the Man United news with Varane that Real Madrid become a significant stumbling block for Chelsea landing this center back. I could be completely wrong, but for me, it's like, that makes the most sense. If I'm Real Madrid, I'm looking at this young Spanish proven player that would make their center back situation infinitely better.
Yeah, for sure. It makes sense. Speaking of center backs, Toby Alderweireld has been moved on, unfortunately, to I forget the name of the club. It is Al Duhal SC in Qatar. Strange move, I think, for him, other than the money. And it's obviously the reason he did it. It is a massive amount of money. He's on $200,000 a week, which is, it's absurd, but I'm not surprised that that's the case and that he's done it. He was a wonderful player for Spurs. He had amazing statistics, known as the Lord of the Pings. I watched a 9-minute video of him pinging balls, like ridiculous balls over the top to players scoring goals. And it was a lot of fun to watch. Massive servant to the club, 6 seasons. Didn't win a thing, which no player has done in the last 6 seasons at Spurs. That's an unfortunate reality. He is our best center half last year, and we sold him, and we haven't replaced him. And I'm just curious, just from an outsider's perspective, watching what's going on with Spurs, and we are clearing players out. Lamella's gone, as we know. Toby's now left. We've got Danny Rose off the books finally. There is clearing of players going on. Was this a mistake from Spurs to do this? Do you think is their best player in that position in the last few seasons, despite his he hasn't been as good as he was. He's still better than Eric Dyer and better than Davinson Sanchez and everybody else we got.
It's hard to blame the club when, like, you can't compete with the kind of money you get at a certain age to go to Qatar. Like, there's no managing around that. I wouldn't hold that against any club that lost a player that chose to go to Qatar or
I guess
China or any of those countries. Like,
just to clarify my question, Spurs got rid of him before replacing him. I think that's the part that Spurs fans and myself included, and probably anybody else looking at, is like, you just got rid of your best center half and you haven't replaced him yet. Who's going to start against City on that first day in 2 weeks? Davinson Sanchez and Eric Dyer against Manchester City on the opening game of the season. That's very worrisome for Spurs fans. So we're terrified that we haven't brought anybody in to replace him. I think that's the fear.
So I wouldn't attribute blame to the club on that. Like, he's come to the end of his journey there, and it's not like he's the the Toby Alderweireld. Like, he needs replacing. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
he's got to go, and you have to replace him, and you haven't replaced him yet. And I get that's how a worrisome thing, but at the same time, it's like, well, you have to look at like who's available at the time this all happened. Like, it's kind of the cards that you've been dealt as a club. Like, I don't put too much stock into asking them or expecting them to have managed this situation so that it was seamless. Sometimes it's just what
it doesn't always work out. I mean, we've had the Romero deal sort of on the cusp of being done,
Right.
which is a massive deal, massive player, would be huge for Spurs to get him in to replace a Toby Alderweireld. And of course, we're still going to need another center half to play beside him. But that deal is kind of like, there's news out today that it sort of fizzled somewhat, and I was like, oh God, here we go again. It's sort of Spursy that these things happen. So the big fear is that we're not going to get in a Romero to replace him, and then what do we do?
Yeah, the Romero rumors, I again, it's one of those ones where I can see Tottenham being in negotiations. I can see them being a club that approached him, but I always saw being one of like maybe 7 clubs that could have approached that guy. Like, to be the defender of the season in Italy, you're going to be approached by a lot of offers, and they won't all necessarily approach you at the same time, especially when he was in an international tournament for a significant amount of time. And he's probably taking some time off, and his people are just like weighing the offers that are slowly coming in, kind of thing.
But just to clarify a little bit, because I know a little bit more about this deal, because Romano has been on Matty Hayes' channel, which is the Spurs YouTube channel, and he always he does transfer news updates like this. He had on Romano or Fabrizio on the show. And he talked about this Romano deal and discussed what was going on with it and how close they are. And essentially, they had agreed to everything except the price. And the price is 55 million at the moment. And it was sort of trying to get past that 55 million. And of course, Daniel Levy, being the schmuck that he is holding back for 5 million or something like that.
Right.
And it's a moment where we have an opportunity to just drop the money and get him. At least that's the perception of the deal from what we see within the media. And of course, we're trying to use trusted sources. You can't always get the right information, but
right.
It looks like it's being very close, and it's just right on the cusp because of the money. There's a being held back from Spurs as a club, and our Paratici, our new football director, has said specifically, we need to pay the extra money, get this deal over the line. In the media, he said that. So it's sort of there is more to the deal than just chucking in a number and see what's happened there. They're in advanced talks with it. So
if that negotiation is that far along, and you guys don't land him for a reason related to 5 million,
that's the part where we're freaking out.
Then, yeah, I think Spurs fans have every right to freak out, because he's a significant signing. He would be
massive for Spurs.
I am a little bit shocked that he would go to Spurs if he ends up going. Like, no disrespect, I just feel like, again, when you're the player or the defender of the season in the famously rich defense of the Italian league in Serie A, I just think the offers should be flowing in from a lot of the big clubs. But yeah, I guess I didn't really realize that you guys were so far off of having 2, like that your pair is gone, because, I'll pour a little out, like
grease on the fire.
I mean, Toby and Jan Vertonghen were, as much as everybody's talking about the Ramos Varane partnership ending, like, this is the final exit of one of the 2 most dominant.
It was the best defense in the Premier League with Rose and Walker for 2 seasons in a row. Like, just statistically, the best defense. And the pairing of him and Jan was incredible. We no longer have any of those 4 now. It's sort of the end of an era for Spurs and how they played a certain way with certain players in that position. So it's so important that we replace Toby Alderweireld and arguably at least get one more really good player in that position as well. And there's a few, Tomiyasu, as we know, we've talked about on previous shows, who's also a right back, but there's other players that have come up. So it's a strange one. I'm sad to see Toby go. He's such a wonderful player to watch for a center half. He's very slick on the ball, and replacing him will be nearly impossible.
Do you think, and this is how my brain kind of works when it comes to center backs, because I do think you need to plan, or any club needs to plan the pair. You can't necessarily go bring in one and then not know who the partner is going to be. So there is a certain logic I find with, we maybe have our main target. Let's say it's Romero. Like, we're going to go after him for sure. And then we know who we want the partner to be, but we're not going to sign the partner unless we know for sure it's going to be Romero, because our second option would be better paired with somebody else.
Yeah. Or they're thinking that that pairing is already in the team, which makes me more nervous. Like, are they thinking, Romero with Dyer or Romero with Sanchez? I mean, that's nerve wracking for me, because both of those players should be squad players if they're going to still be at Spurs. We should sell them both, I think. Right. But you still need depth in the position, and those, at least one of them is a good depth player in that position. But like if that's the thinking, I'm concerned, because it seems to me that if we don't get that done, if we don't get that across, at least one of them in like you said, the right partner, it could be a pretty difficult season for Spurs.
Yeah, I got to admit, like, I was aware of the center back situation at Spurs, but maybe not totally plugged into it. I would be worried. Like, this is, if I was a Spurs fan, this sounds like I would be a bit.
Everybody's worried. If you're on any of the Spurs channels that we're on, that's the topic of conversation.
Right.
Every stream is just like, what's going on with the center halves? What's going on? Right. Oh God, and of course the Romero one, as soon as the buzz came, and Fabrizio Romano reporting it the way he was and saying how close it was to getting over the line, that it was really, really, really close, and that it should happen this week. That was what he said on Friday, I believe, is that that deal should be done by the end of next week, based on what he knows about the deal. And I was like, oh God. And then of course we get the news yesterday that, there's a problem with how much it's going to cost, and it's $5 million, and then we're like, here we go again. This is what happens to Spurs almost every time. We end up bringing a lesser player or lesser players, maybe a 2-for-1 with for the same amount of money but not as good, which is what we always do, or we used to always do. And I'm hoping that with Paratici in there that'll change. But of course it's hard for us to get our head around that changing when Levy's still the one in there calling the shots. And
Is there any, speaking of lesser players, is there anybody you guys are attached to out of Wolves? Because I'm expecting some sort of Spurs raid on Wolves, just in that classic. That hasn't been,
it's strangely, and I thought that might happen as well. I thought we'd at least see some of that, but it hasn't happened. It hasn't been this guy and this guy. I think there's a couple players in there that that I think, I don't know, in the center half position. Who do they have? I think they've sold.
Boney's still there. I think Cody's still there.
I mean, Cody's a good player. Is Dendoncker still there? He was at Wolves, right? But
he's a midfield player.
Yeah, he's defensive midfield. I don't know. It hasn't been a thing, and I thought it would be too. You expect that with a manager from especially a Premier League club, because they're already in the league. It's an easier move and an easier way to get the deal done than it is from a foreign player. So I'm surprised, but no, it hasn't been anything about it. Not even a wink. And maybe that'll happen later in the window, because the focus so much right now is getting those center halves in, or at least attempting to. That's not the first. There aren't players in that team that they're good enough to fill this position. Wow. So I think that's where we're at.
I love being on this side. My deal is done. I love being on this side. This situation is making me increasingly grateful for the Varane deal announced today.
Yeah, no more silly season for you, right? But I think that brings us to an end of our first breaking news show, which was a lot of fun, Paul. Really enjoyed that. And we will be doing this as often as breaking news happens, and as often as we're able to be here to do it. So thank you for watching. We will be back soon. We don't have a time specifically. We were going to do a pod maybe this week, but we decided that we just do some breaking news, and we'll see how it rolls out. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Cheers. Bye.
This is the North End.